I'm getting my power back by really reclaiming my agency in all areas of my life, which very much includes my career, my professional identity, and my next moves. Thank you so much for joining me on this week's episode of Surgeon Interrupted. Today's episode is brought to you by the Hippocratic Collective. Check out our other shows and content at hippocratic-collective.com. All right, guys, we are in the Ozarks. We're coming to you from the Ozarks this week. I am glamping. This is like secretly one of my favorite spots in the country. It became a safe haven for me during residency training. I was a resident in Middle Missouri, which is like about 2.5 hours north of here. And so in terms of like the golden weekend escape, the Ozarks were it. The Ozarks were it. Spent like actually a surprising amount of time down here just because it was a place that one could escape to that didn't require a flight or PTO. I have not been back to this area of the country since graduating from residency. So it's been over 3 years since I've last been out here in the Ozarks, kind of down at the lake. But I'm very happy to be back. And I think because of all of the healing that I've done, it's not triggering to be back here. I'll actually be headed back to the institution where I trained. I'm going back there in 3 days now, and it's for a work thing. So it's in a work capacity, and I truly never thought that I would go back to this town, but like, we're doing it. And what's more is I am looking forward to it. I really am. I think that there's a lot to be said for that old quote that the mind suffers more in imagination than in reality. Like, especially when it comes to places where traumatic things happened or, like associations with traumatic events, I do think that there's a lot to be said about like reclaiming your power and like also taking the memory back or like taking the location back. So I'm very excited. And what I expect to happen, I'll keep you guys posted, but like what I expect to happen when I go back to my old institution is that there will be peace surrounding that. Just like the return, just being around there, seeing the old sights, the old smells, all of it. Because I really am at a point where I'm grateful for every bit of the journey. I have to admit that I wouldn't be the person that I am today without my ENT residency training experience and without that town and without having like the Ozarks here to escape to. I would not be here today and I wouldn't be the person that I am today. So maybe I sound like I'm getting older and wiser, but that is because I am. I'm able to see the bigger picture a lot better than I used to be able to. I love the take back concept because one of my girlfriends from Notre Dame, she taught me this over a decade ago. It's this idea where like she and I, we both were, I think, going on like various degrees of unpleasant dates. And she told me after one of these dates, she was like, okay, I need to take back the restaurant. Like she just kind of had an unpleasant date with this guy and she didn't want like that poor memory to be associated with one of her favorite restaurants. Totally understand. Like that was one of her haunts. That's one of her go-tos. So you do like, there's a sense that you can take it back afterwards. So I've been a big believer in that ever since. And I genuinely think like the Ozarks are even an example of that. Like had never been down here in my life until residency training. Haven't been back since. Kind of thought this whole swath of the country was like going to be on my no-fly list, but here I am, and I'm having like the best time glamping out here. I've had a couple different run-ins with ants that I'm trying not to think too much about. I did have a wolf spider walk onto my laptop as well that was like 1.5 inches, but other than that, obviously, like really thrilled to be here, and it's fun to take things back. And I think that it really shows the power of perspective though, and like the mental framework that we build up around these things. Like, oh, I had a unpleasant interaction at that restaurant. I guess like now every time I think of that restaurant, I get a little bit tense and like I also can't go back there anymore. It's like life's too short. So we're doing the take back this week. This is an incredibly gorgeous and peaceful part of the country. And I don't want to be someone who can't come back to Missouri ever again because of the pain and trauma that I endured here. I also want to talk a little bit about travel itself because, like, maybe you don't know this about me, but I love traveling. I would describe myself as an avid traveler, when possible. It's been pretty limited over the past 8 years working full time in a hospital. But I'm a person where I think that there's a tree scraping against my tent. So that's show business. That's kind of the risk of recording outdoors here. But I love traveling. My worldview has all gotten much bigger and better because of my travels. And I'm excited to travel a lot more in like this second act of life. I'm no longer tied to a hospital schedule or a call schedule, especially the call part. And, being responsible for your own patients, like that has very strict, extremely important boundaries around it, which I just feel very freed by not having to worry about that element anymore. That's why I'm spending the whole month of May on the road here, giving the vibes of like just got out of jail. Fresh out the slammer, if you're a TTPD fan. And so when it comes to traveling, totally understandably, I am getting a lot of questions about like, well, this is a second act. Like you just left your job. So how can one afford to travel in that vein? And I just will say everybody's umpteenth reminder that Instagram is not reality, right? Like social media is not reality. I always had a lot of questions when I was like in my 20s and saw really chic women just like jet setting every single day 365. That's definitely not going to be me. And I wanted to actually be transparent about like some of this travel, especially this sprint that I'm going into right now and just being on the road for the whole month of May. So last week I was in Napa. This week I'm in the Ozarks. Next week I'm in New York City and Philly. And then the 4th week of May I'm in Miami. And like the whole month I'm spending 4 nights in my own bed at home. But the way that this came about is actually pretty interesting because Lauren Umstead and I, my HC co-founder and my old senior resident, she and I booked this Napa trip summer of 2024, which is about how far out like practicing female surgeons have to book their trips. We knew we wanted to get away. We wanted to go out with our husbands. And so we booked like an Airbnb out in Calistoga. And it was so, so wonderful. And it was like really beautiful, serendipitous timing because like the HC launch happened right before our Napa trip that was already on the books. And we got to all be together and kind of celebrate. So it was wonderful. Next, an opportunity arose where I am going to go to mid-Missouri. So, and that accounted for my first week in May. That was always on the books. Second week in May, because I had a work opportunity come up in a few days here in mid-Missouri, and I was no longer tied to a schedule, I truly last minute booked this whole glamping trip. It was like very last minute. It was done online. But here's the thing is, I do stay on top of a lot of travel deals. I stay on the mailing list, the email list for all of my favorite hotels, this being one of them. And they actually even emailed out. They were like, it's a special pre-Memorial Day deal. The point being, that's the deal that I snagged to get kind of the week here prior to my commitment in Middle Missouri. And I say that because this place is incredibly gorgeous, like that shows in photo and video. I know that in peak season, these glamping tents have gone easily to the rate of like 800 or more a night. Easily. I've seen it, especially post-COVID. But to be totally transparent with you, the deal that I got is $250 a night. $250 a night for a gorgeous, this is a family glamping tent. It has like 2 sinks. It's extra wide here. That is just a steal. It was a really good deal. I'm not by any means saying that $250 is nothing, but I am saying that for a person who like really loves and values travel, who stays on top of it, is always looking for deals, that's a pretty good deal. It's a good value, knowing that I wanted to come out here anyway. So again, though, it's interesting because we lucked out with the weather. It looks like peak season. It's acting like peak season. But by doing a last minute booking I would call this shoulder season now, was able to get a steal. I just think that that's really important when you see people online, like living the dream life. To an extent, it's either not real, here's how I break it down. because I've been a consumer of like online content my whole life, right? Like I've seen women living my dream life. What I found when we see people online living a dream life, however you would define it, like something that you're looking at and you're thinking that's the dream, it is one of two things going on. Number one is it's fake. That's mostly the case. So knowing that most of what people put online is fake, that is statistically probably the most common explanation for like this dream life that you're seeing. But I do think that there's a very interesting number two. And the interesting number two is that they worked really hard for it. You know, and that second bucket is a combination of extremely consistent hard work plus luck. And that got them their dream life. But I do, I don't see a third bucket. I don't have a third explanation for how somebody kind of gets that dream life. I guess people would say maybe Nepo baby these days. That seems pretty good. I would take Nepo baby. But those being the three. And I do think that to an extent, when people ask me now, like, well, how were you able to leave the hospital? How are you able to travel? You don't see the years of really hard work and consistent effort that went into that. I just want to reiterate, like, it is not a walk in the park. Everyone who feels like they're stuck in a job and they're like, well, it seems really hard to leave. It is hard to leave. It can be worth it for people like myself, but I don't think that there's any shortcuts. Okay, so to wrap up kind of travel palooza in May. This is my second week of May in the Ozarks. Next week, I'm heading to Philly for work. Very excited about a new, really like job position that I'm doing part-time out there. And then I'm going from Philly into New York City. Again, some different work meetings and opportunities, team members that I'm going to be meeting with in person in Philly and then in New York City as well. So that worked out very well. Like all these weeks that I'm spending on the road, they just like fit together so nicely. And yeah, I'm going to be homesick by the end of the month, but I'm just really trying to like take it day by day and enjoy every single place that I'm in and every point along the journey. The final week of May, I'm going to be in Miami, and that also actually comes back to a special travel deal that I was able to book more last minute. It is very much kind of like off season, Memorial Day week for like Miami travel. And so I was able to get a really good deal, and I have been excited about that. My husband does not have any PTO left, so this is kind of a solo travel month, but it's very fun, and I've solo traveled before, and I really, really like it. So just grateful to be here. The last thing that I want to talk about today is the concept of and the terminology for the quote-unquote highly sensitive person. I don't feel like I see it around that much, but I did read a book with the eponymous title a few years ago. And they say that up to like 15% of the population is made up of highly sensitive people. And I definitely fall into that category. It showed up in a lot of ways. It became very apparent like during my surgical residency. And it's just interesting how even all these years later, some of my friends even say to me like, I'm sorry I didn't really like notice a lot of the dynamics of what was going on at the hospital. Like I was physically there. I was also overworked, tired, kind of dissociated. And like, I don't register a lot of like, if people say really rude stuff to me or if like somebody attacks somebody else in the room, like it doesn't like register that much to me. That of course seems kind of like a superpower to me. Like if I could have that power back in residency, I'd be happy as a clam. But I was always the opposite. Like, I don't know of a way for that to not be really psychologically disturbing, to be in a room and like that type of stuff is going on, whether directed at me or vitriol directed at somebody else. But that being said, I think that what is nice and what I'm trying to propose here is that the highly sensitive person, they have a superpower as well. You know, we're empathic. We try to speak up when we can if we're not too afraid, like when we see that type of stuff going on, whether at work or outside of work. And I just think that it's really interesting because of the characteristics where I can go back and do a post-mortem on my career as a surgeon, on my surgical residency, I do think that one of the qualities that can be a superpower that hurt me a lot as a resident was being a highly sensitive person. And again, people will colloquially be like, "Oh, you're so sensitive. Stop being so sensitive." It's like, I do think that it makes me now, honestly, a better businesswoman and a better artist, a better coworker to the people who I connect with on teams and things like that. Like, so it is a superpower, and I just want to remind everyone that, like, sometimes when you're not fitting in at a job, it isn't that you aren't good at the job, and it isn't that you don't have special superpowers of your own. I do, like, at the end of the day, yeah, I think that surgeons who are able to kind of like block out the noise around them, they aren't really affected by interpersonal interactions. That's awesome. That is a superpower. That's going to like take you so far in the kind of world that I just came from. But like, I think that my skill set is still extremely valuable. And I already, even though I've been 1 month out of the hospital now, like, I see the value that it adds, and I see the value that people appreciate from that. I told you guys at Surgeon Interrupted, like, I want to be very transparent about the journey. I genuinely do. I'm not going to ever disguise it and like bullshit people and just say, yeah, it's lit every day. Like, I got out of the hospital and it's a nonstop party and all your dreams will come true if you leave your job. I'm not going to say that at all. The reason that I've been sharing a lot of wins is because there have been a lot of wins. So I don't think that we can discount the fact that when you make the harder but right decision, the universe rewards that. And it feels like, in terms of when we think of alignment and things like that, everything has been easier. Like, the extraordinary struggle, the extraordinary effort that I had to put into just doing my work before, it sapped so much out of me that I just like had nothing left. Like, the work depleted me. The environment depleted me. The way that workplace responded, the culture in the workplace, again, they depleted. And I've been living in that space for so long. So right now it does feel like a wealth of riches. It truly, like, the idiom, quote unquote, breath of fresh air comes to mind. Like, I'm getting my first breath of fresh air in a decade. And I think that just, like, we should celebrate that. I'm not going to rush past this era, and we should celebrate it. On the flip side, I think that it's helpful for people to know that, like, yeah, I'm glamping out here this week. I'm still working. I have already put in a 6-hour workday, pretty much nonstop, like phone, laptop, actively working, even before recording this today. And I have more work to do tonight. And then I have some night meetings. But, like, we call them night meetings, but I truly, like, I am enjoying what I'm doing. And sure, I definitely have a moment every day or every few days where I'm like, should I throw all my technology, like, into the lake? Yeah, I mean, I have that thought because, we are human beings, and, like, to an extent, I'm like, I hope your email doesn't find me. But I'm just kidding about that. And when we think of, like, Glennon Doyle's choose your hard quote, that's what I feel like I've done. I don't even feel like the work hours or the cognitive requirements of my jobs are that much easier than my ENT practice, but they are better aligned for me. And I have chosen my hard. And I think that is what's showing in, like, every area of my life, including, like, my skin and hair, honestly, where, like, I take full responsibility for it. Like, I take full agency for this. This is what I chose. As opposed to, some people will be able to relate. Like, I'm a first generation Asian, and becoming a doctor was very much like kind of on the docket, and it was on the path. So when it did get really hard and get really crazy, I do not feel like I was thinking, well, I chose this, like, I chose this, so I'm going to square up and stay here. Like, I think that there was always this underlying, like, I don't know what I would have chosen if it hadn't been laid out for me. So thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Surgeon Interrupted. It is truly such a privilege to be able to have this creative outlet and to be able to connect with all of you, and I will never take it for granted. If you enjoyed this episode, please share, rate, and subscribe, and we will be here every Tuesday on Surgeon Interrupted. Until then, I encourage you to do an audit of your life and make sure that you're choosing your hard. There's a lot that is really hard about being an adult, about life, but it feels so much better when you can truly say that you've chosen it.